Moving on to 016, postponed from August 12th, 2015, ordinance for the issuance of State Series 2015 Joint Utility System Revenue Bonds. Mr. Olson.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, thank you. Just a little background and history. So back in August, staff brought forward a bond ordinance requesting approval from the governing body to approve the bond ordinance that would have done two things. It would have refinanced some existing debt and then authorized additional new money debt to reconstruct wastewater treatment plant number 1. At the time, the governing body requested staff to split those ordinances into two pieces so they could be considered separately, and we did that. We have since completed the refinancing piece. You were very supportive of that, and we appreciate that. Your instructions also were to take the new money piece to the Utility Commission to give the Utility Commission a chance to review the project and the financing. So we have done that. The Utility Commission met last week, and they offered a favorable recommendation for the bonds and the project. So we are bringing this ordinance forward for a second reading to seek your approval to authorize issuance of bonds to construct a new wastewater treatment plant number 1. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, let me go ahead and let me take a motion to approve, and then I'll get to the speakers on this.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Smith.
Move to approve 0616.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. I have some speakers on this. We'll start with Mr. Hensley.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, Ron Hensley, 300 Branding Iron, Rio Rancho. There are many reasons to reevaluate the option being considered for the reconstruction of Treatment Plant 1. Staff has maintained the only option is the proposed MBR facility and has not provided any realistic evaluation of alternatives. They have characterized alternative conventional treatment methods as being old technology and obsolete. Well, the wheel is pretty old technology, but it still works pretty well and is not obsolete. The only justification that has been provided for the upgrade of Plant 1 is the unrestricted use of the effluent. However, for the people paying the bills, the foremost justification is and should be an evaluation of the cost versus benefit in capital and operations of increasing effluent quality. However, no such evaluation has been presented. What staff has not addressed are the facts that we currently have a demand for over 1 million gallons per day of irrigation quality effluent that Plant 1 can produce, and that the reuse irrigation rate structure was based on conventional treatment costs. In addition, the use could be expanded to Haynes Park and the sports complex or most any facility where irrigation takes place during non-operational hours. The majority of the Utility Commission recommended this bond. However, when staff presented the issue to the Utility Commission, it was presented as the only alternative. Therefore, the Utility Commission was left with an all-or-nothing approach for Plant 1. A few of the commissioners had the temerity to question the project, but their questions and concerns went unanswered. I applaud the two dissenting commissioners who demonstrated their integrity by withholding their support for a project that has not been proven appropriate. Since alternatives are not being offered, as an engineer, I would like to provide one that utilizes the existing system characteristics and can be constructed at a significantly reduced cost. The effluent system is currently separated into basically two zones: the historic irrigation system of type B effluent and the new zone of type A effluent for the injection facility. Maintaining this separation makes great sense. Why spend additional millions of dollars to water grass with high quality water? The ratepayers have endured the increases in their bills with the assurance that their money would be used for the existing system. For this alternative that I suggest, a lift station would be installed at Plant 1 to temporarily reverse the flow in the forced main from lift station 10. This would allow for the decommissioning of the existing facility and enable use of the entire site for construction of a conventional treatment facility. The capital cost for this project would be approximately $18 million and have an annual operation and maintenance cost of about $500,000, compared to the $25 million and the annual O&M cost of $900,000 for an MBR facility. These figures are based on information provided by the Membrane Technology Association, GE Water and Process Technologies, past city projects, and industry standards. Staff has presented a single option that has simply not been justified. and I don't see how you can justify this action to the people paying the bills. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Greg Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I got a call at 8 o'clock this morning from Lynn Anderson asking me to represent NIOP here in support of this program. I had a letter that I asked the city clerk to pass out, which apparently you have. I hope you have time to read that and consider that. In my opinion, every day here in Rio Rancho, we have the opportunity to be the city of vision that we bill ourselves as, or not to be that city of vision. And we have that opportunity again right now. I had the chance to chat with Mr. Sensenbauer for a bit today, and he mentioned to me that that plant was about 45 years old. And oddly enough, that is about the time of my first visit to Rio Rancho. I remember driving up here, and it took forever, and driving to what was going to be my job for that day, framing a house, which probably connected to that sewage treatment plant all those years ago. At the time, it was pretty desolate out here, and I couldn't imagine why anybody would want to move here. And then 20 years, a wife and 2 kids later, I moved to Rio Rancho into a house that probably connected to that same sewage treatment plant. And now another 25 years has passed, and it's time to replace that plant. I guess I kind of began to see the vision when I moved here. I think, in my opinion, the vision is opportunity. Opportunity in a lifestyle which allows people and businesses to grow and get jobs and support their families in a community with a safe and healthy environment. I've seen Rio Rancho grow to be the 3rd largest city in the state. And that's because of the leadership of the past and the current administrations. I've always been impressed, in fact, by the community's ability to stretch a dollar. Even though we've always had one of the lowest per capita revenue streams from gross receipts tax in the state, we've managed to run a city and build a nice city. And I want to take this opportunity to thank all those city employees that I've worked with in the past. I really do appreciate their service and friendly service. We heard the word antiquated often in Rio Rancho, and it's mostly associated with platting, but it's also associated with technology, whether it's software, computers, or sewage treatment plants. The proposed treatment plant is not antiquated, and it's not a short-term solution to a long-term problem. It's state-of-the-art technology that meets the needs of a growing, healthy community by increasing capacity and by providing the ability to re-inject water into what I consider to be a savings account for that precious and expensive commodity.
And Mr. Campbell, I hate to cut you off there, but we've got a 3-minute time limit. I appreciate your comments, and in fairness to all the other speakers, I'm going to hold you there.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate NAOP's input on this issue. Thank you. Next up, let's see, we have Debbie Moore.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, I think we all know the importance of water and proper treatment of it to economic development. I believe you all have our position paper, and so I won't bore you by rereading it. I will just say that is that my buzzer already?
No, that was the start.
We believe the passage of this ordinance for these utility system bonds would be in the best interest of continued growth and business and economic development in our city. So that's the statement of the chamber. No buzzer.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, I'll go ahead and open comments by council.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Everett.
I won't repeat the comments I made at the first counselor comment segment, but except to underline what Mr. Campbell just said, that we're looking to the future. This is an investment in the future. It's not a cheap, short-term fix, and I don't believe for one moment that staff didn't carefully consider and review less expensive, less visionary solutions. But I think they've come up with the best solution. I'm glad to see our business community stepping forward, our two major business organizations, in terms of growth here in Rio Rancho. I thank them for that. And I'm concerned about the debate so far. I think there's been a lot of misinformation spread around, and I don't know whether that's because people are misinformed or deliberately misleading. It really doesn't matter. I urge everyone to pay attention and consider the source and consider the expertise of who you're listening to, and the short-term and long-term interests of why those of us who support this proposal are supporting it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Wilkins.
I'm just going to hit a few talking points and explain my vote, but anytime anybody would like to sit down with me, I'd be more than glad to meet with anybody anytime and go into depth, and because this is a very complicated issue. You know, when I started, I actually served 3 years on the Utilities Commission, and you know, all the time I kept hearing why our water rates are so much higher is because our infrastructure is so spread out, so fragmented, and so now we have an opportunity to start consolidating some of it, moving it over to two, and I think that makes more sense long-term. I'm thinking long-term, not short-term, or giving somebody a new high-tech toy to play with. You know, NAOP makes comments about, you know, without this supply of recycled water, the city will not be able to meet the demand of the aquifer recharge program. Well, the actual permit says this water has to come from Waste Treatment 6, which is in Cabazon, and that produces about 1.2 million gallons a year, or excuse me, 1,200 acre foot, and we can only put in 1,000 acre foot into this aquifer at this time, and it's probably going to be a while before we do it again, or upgrade it or continue it. And then the next area that would probably make sense is Mariposa, where we already have this new high-tech, expensive maintenance or operations plant that we could direct inject up there, which is upstream of the aquifer. I think we need to check our priorities. You know, wasn't too long ago, we were talking about the price of reuse water, and staff was wanting to do 20-30% on this, or 30% of what regular water was. And the thought was, you know, we want to sell it, and it doesn't cost much to produce it. And if we sell it and it's used for irrigation, then they're not using potable water, saving us money on the potable side and reducing our pumping. I agree. I think the priority should be our pumping permit first, because we have a requirement to put so much in the river. And once we meet that, then it should be irrigation. And I agree, there's a lot of misleading information out there, because you start hearing about 1A and 1B. Ooh, 1B, it's restricted. What is the restriction? You can't spray it within 100 feet of a building or an occupied building or a dwelling. You can use drip systems within that 100 feet. You can soak the ground within that 100 feet. You could actually landscape rock within that 100 feet. So we could actually produce 1B and irrigate almost everywhere and do it at a fraction of the cost of the 1A. So we got plenty. And irrigation should be the second priority. And once we're done with the second priority, then third, do direct injection. But that's going to take time. Our plan, you know, I kept hearing about the city's plan. Well, we got the city plan sent out to us, and there's 1, 2A, 2B, 2C, 3A, 3B, 3C, all the way through 5C. and every one of them's different, okay? I haven't seen anything that says this is the one we went with. This is the one we decided. The goal is to put back in the river as little as possible. That could be irrigation, which I think makes more sense. I keep hearing, again, from the chamber and NAIOP, well, this is within the budget. This is within the debt. We were going to take out $40 million anyway. Well, the problem with that is the $40 million was supposed to go for 6 different projects, water projects, and 8 different wastewater projects. And you can go to 2012, 2013 and take a look at our ICIP. It lists them and which ones are bond proceeds, which ones are cash, which ones are state grants. So you can take a look. Now we're going to spend $25 million on one project. Now you're going to hear, well, we've paid cash for some of the other ones. Yeah, great. Let's take that cash that we've been paying for and let's not overspend on a project that doesn't need to be done. And if we can, then let's reduce the rates. We're only second highest in the whole state on our water. And if we're really worried about bringing business here, how much water has Intel used from us since the water rate increases have gone in place? It's gone down dramatically. Are we chasing businesses away? So I went over the setbacks, and again, I'm willing to sit down with anybody, but this is not the way forward. I know at the Utilities Commission, actually I'm a car guy. Car stuff was brought up quite a bit if you go back and take a look at it. And I think we do need to get the politics out of this and use the cost benefit, what makes sense. And I think the expert, the former chairman of the utilities that actually has a background in water conservation and stuff, he's got it right, and he said it well up here. But we brought up cars and talking about, how I'm selling my car and I'm getting ready to buy a new 2016 Mustang. Well, when I ran for office, I talked about frugal spending. If I'm going out and spending my money, guess what? I'm going to buy a 2016 Corvette. That's my preference. But if I'm buying it for the citizens, it's going to be a Focus or a Malibu or a Toyota Camry, because that's what we need to get from A to B. We don't need the Corvette. We don't need the Mustang. We can do it with reasonable spending and not overspending. We don't need this. And if we want to move to membrane, the best place to start the membrane is put it at the end of Plant 2, which has got a capacity of like 3.3 to 3.5, 5 million gallons a day. Put it at the end, and as we need more, have it where it can be diverted into the membrane or through the regular cleaning, which is a lot cheaper. So the months that we don't need it, or when we do decide we start needing it for direct injection, use it at one of the biggest plants, consolidate it, make it more cost effective. We've given graphs from staff that shows the curve on the cost of capital and operations, and it goes down with the size. So let's make one bigger one where it's needed, when we need it. I keep hearing that we can't grow unless we add this. We need this for growth. Well, currently, we're at 60 to 65%. You can take a look at the FY15 ICIP, and it talks about our capacity at 4 million, and we're only doing it at like 4.4 million. So we're about half, or 60% if you want to count it on the peak days. So I think it's time that we spend our money wisely. We buy the Malibu, not the Corvette or the Mustang. And when you go to A to B, staff can go in the Malibu. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilors?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Smith.
Wanted to largely explain why the way I'm going to vote. And first, I was fortunate enough to be invited to a meeting by the Tea Party where Councilor Wilkins explained his viewpoint in detail and how it contrasted from that of city staff. And I appreciate that because, again, it was the ability to collect as much information as I can. I don't tend to ask a lot of questions up here because I do write them down and I'll go to the horse's mouth, when we're not sitting up here speaking about it. And I've gone to staff on more than one occasion to have them explain this incredibly complicated situation we find ourselves in. When I ran, one of the things I ran on was growth for businesses. I take into consideration the expertise that we've hired as a council that sit in front of us collectively a sign of good leadership, once again, is surround yourself with those that are smarter than you are. And if you can't trust what they're doing, it's incumbent upon us to replace them. And I don't think that's necessary in any case because, as Councilor Wilkins points out, he worked with the Utilities Commission for 3 years. Well, I worked for the city for 11 and a half and worked with an agency of Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department for another year working cases up here as well. So a lot of the questions I already know the answers to because I've worked here for so many years. And again, I'll find out from the horse's mouth with reference to that. So as much as I can say I understand this, I don't profess to understand it as much as the former chairman who spoke, which is quite identical to what was explained by Councilor Wilkins as well. And I don't think that's coincidental. I would have to make 2 comments with regards to the possibility that perhaps Councilor Wilkins is alluding to the fact that Intel might be using less water because we charge so much, which is void of the fact that Intel nationally has downsized greatly due to the economy worldwide, and that would probably have more of a profound effect on their usage of water from the city of any type than our rates. Reasonable spending, I understand where Councilor Wilkins comes from, and I think it's a good idea, but that could be hazardous as well. There was a time in law enforcement where reasonable spending meant we only drove Impalas. We live in the middle of the desert. As Councilor Clayton can agree with, a lot of our roads are dirt. There was a winter that took place that literally an entire police department was hopping into one 4-wheel drive to go to calls because we were penny pinching to the point where we didn't even have enough 4-wheel drives within our department to address your calls. So if we go back to the car issue, and I flip that to a 4-wheel drive, sometimes you're going to need to spend the money to have the equipment so the citizens in the city can be taken care of properly. You now see on our roads a number of 4-wheel drives. Now, back in the day with these Impalas, it was not under the leadership of the staff that we have before us. It was under another former city manager who, if I recall, had to actually apologize to the public because of the lack of ability to respond, both with law enforcement as well as roads. So those are the things I take into consideration when I'm going to make my decision on where we go forward with. I really hope that city utilities or the commission really gets worked out because at one point we're supposed to listen to them, at the next point we're not. The vote came back and I had a speech ready and it's going to be the same speech that reluctantly and regardless I'll listen to the commission. It'll be unfortunate if I find myself in a position where the commission speaks contrary to the council or contrary to city staff, but I'll have to take that into consideration and go from there. But what I have before me is a commission that voted for this. I have before me many businesses out there that understand that this movement is probably a movement that needs to take place, that it does send a message out there to the other businesses that may be looking to come to Rio Rancho, that we're not just going to piecemeal together and get by, that we are looking for people who are serious about coming to this city and working, regardless of what Intel does or doesn't do. I think when people do look, there's 2 things they grab, our newspaper, and they're going to look at our infrastructure. And I think this takes care of it. And I just wanted to address those issues so you know where I'm coming from when I cast my vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilors.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Clayton.
how are you this evening?
I'm wonderful, Deputy Mayor. How are you?
Good. Good vacation?
Yes, yes.
I bet. Mr. Mayor, I spent an evening with Councilor Smith at the Tea Party and heard Councilor Wilkins discuss at length his version of what should be done. He said it tonight on several occasions when he was speaking earlier. He has a way with numbers, there's no doubt about that. I think we have to take a look at some hardcore situations. Number one, I went to work part-time for Intel way back in about 2002 as a security officer. At that point in time, they had 8,400 employees there. About 3 years later, they had 6,000 employees. Oh, by the way, everybody said, gee, if Intel goes away, Rio Rancho is going to die. Well, they lost about 2,500 employees, and Rio Rancho continued to grow. And then about 2 years, 3 years after that, we're up to 2008 or so. They lost another 2,000, down to 4,000, and Rio Rancho continued to grow. And everybody kept, not everybody, but certain few said, chicken lick in the sky is, oh, I shouldn't say that, should I? Chicken lick, no, that's not, well, we'll talk about that later. And then all of a sudden, about 11 or 12, we're down to about 2,000. Right now, we're at about 2,000 employees, and Rio Rancho continues to grow. So let's face it, folks, if they went from 8,400 people down to 2,000 people, I would guess there was a whole lot less toilets being flushed, there was a whole lot less drinking fountains being used of the 6,000 people that went away. So I don't think we can say that Intel is a primary cause of not bothering to upgrade what we've got. I spent my life in corporate America, and the one thing we always looked at was planned obsolescence. And that's a major issue. It's a major issue to you people right out here. Planned obsolescence in your house, planned obsolescence in your car, planned obsolescence in your clothing, the whole 9 yards. And if you don't plan for that, then you're going to be buying a brand new car about every 2 years because you didn't bother to do a grease job and oil change, and your tires are all flat, and you got that car sitting out in the driveway and it won't run because you didn't plan for planned obsolescence either. And now you had 125,000 miles on the car, and you just kept pouring money into it to fix the transmission and fix the rear end and fix the engine instead of planning for planned obsolescence. Say, it's time, Mom, that we get rid of this junker. And that's exactly what we're looking at here, ladies and gentlemen. We're looking at a plant that's over 46 years old. We're talking about, well, we send things down to another plant. The plant number 2 is 20 years old. Gee. So now we're saying, let's stay with what we've got. The question was asked at a meeting earlier about going with a particular plan, and it was explained very carefully by staff that that plan would not allow for water to be put into reinjection. It was an old-style plan. So here we are, waiting to do something to bring us into the 21st century, as opposed to being back in the 20th century, way back in the 20th century. And it's offensive to me that we have people who believe that we should continue to do Band-Aid, bale and wire, and spit to hold a plant together that's that old, if in fact we need to move forward into the modern world of engineering and electronics and get a plant that we can continue to use for the next 30 years. So the money is well spent. It should be used. We should vote this in. And if we don't, then we'll only be in a problem if in fact, oh gee, everybody says what if. Well, I'll give you a what if. What if plant number 1 blows up and we transfer everything to plant number 2 and plant number 2 blows up? Oh, where do we go then, folks? Well, let's not talk about that because that's only a what if. All I'm saying is planned obsolescence is the game that's played in every single business in the world, and it should be the business of this city. And I commend the staff totally. That staff's job is to take some sort of a project, look at all the options, and move the options forward that they think is best. And that's why I believe that staff did an excellent job with this. They didn't hide anything in the bushes. They brought forth what they thought was the best option for the city of Rio Rancho. And I agree with that option, and I'll vote in favor of it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Scott.
Mr. Olson? What is your rough estimate that a MBR replacement plant would cost in total at where a waste treatment plant 1 is right now? In total?
Mayor, Councilor.
Your estimate. I'm not looking for a hard number, but your estimate based on the amount that this bond is requesting. So the principal plus interest would be approximately what number?
Mayor, councilors, you're asking with the total cost of the financing?
Yeah, I can find out it's
Not the
principal
actual
plus interest,
construction.
because we're talking, tonight, we're really talking about a bond.
Correct, yeah.
We're not talking about whether or not waste treatment plant 1 is viable or good or needs repair or needs to be replaced or needs a new arm, or we're basically, I'm focused on the bond and the money.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. I was just making sure you weren't talking cost of construction versus
No,
financing.
absolutely
Okay,
not. The
very
bond
good.
plus interest
Yeah, so,
in the period of bond.
so at the Utilities Commission, I didn't have the numbers in front of me.
Correct.
I used a rule of thumb of 1.5 times. So whatever principal you borrow, when you pay back principal and interest in total, it's 1.5 times your principal, and threw out a number of 37 million. Today, we had our financial advisor run some numbers for us based on today's rates, and it comes out to about 38.5 million, principal and interest.
38.5 million.
Correct.
Now, the bond that we approved at the last meeting, what did that one come out to, principal plus interest?
Mayor, Counselor, that was a refinancing. Over the life of that, it was about 40.5,
About 40.5?
correct, on a 27,365,000 par amount.
All right, and is the interest term on this one a longer period of years? Was the interest, would we have more interest on this one than the last bond?
Counselor, you're talking the new money, yes, we would have, because it's 25 years. The one we just did is 17 years.
So your estimate would be $37 million?
38.
38. All right. I'm not a finance director or an expert. I came up with a slightly higher number, but I could go with, round it off to $40 million. Would that be fair? We're not exactly sure what the interest rate will be because the bond hasn't been approved and we haven't gone out for the money. So it could be anywhere $37 to $40 million.
Counselor, if rates go up, then we could get to $40 million, yes.
Could be $40 million for the replacement of a MBR-style plant at Waste Treatment 1. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Olson. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Council, any further from the council?
I might have one more thing, but please, if anyone else wants to.
I have Counselor Robinson. Okay, Counselor Robinson is passed.
Mr. Mayor?
Counselor Everett.
I really take exception to phrases like a high-tech toy to play with, or a Cadillac, or a Corvette. I keep my cars for 20 years, so I don't invest in cars lightly. I don't invest as a taxpayer in infrastructure lightly, but I want something that's going to last. I don't want, first car I ever owned cost me $200, and it died 6 months later with a cracked block. I couldn't drive it. I don't want to see that happen with our water and sewer infrastructure. The new technology is not a toy. In fact, countless communities across the Southwest and the nation are using the technology and have been for upwards of 15 years. One of the utilities commissioners who voted in the minority against approving this bond issue referred to the technology as experimental, whereupon one of the other commissioners who served on a utilities commission in a community in California that had had that experimental technology in place for 15 years and very successfully. That's what I'm talking about in terms of misinformation. But I think the decision boils down to, as I said at the beginning of this meeting, what kind of community do we want to be when we grow up? Do we want to grow up? Do we want to do what it takes and make the sacrifices and have the vision, as Mr. Campbell said, to move forward and to be the city that we say we are? Thank you.
Counselor Smith.
Mr. Mayor, I have two quick questions. Average lifespan of a wastewater treatment plant, what was the expected life expectancy before we would have addressed this?
Okay, can I, Mr. Sensenbauer, is that are these
Whoever
Public
can
Works?
confidently answer that one.
Yeah,
would
Mr. Sensenbauer, can
appreciate
you
it.
step forward, please?
First, I'd like to comment to Mr. Sensenbauer on your optimism that you thought you're going to be able to sit way back there during
Yeah,
this topic.
I was about to say, we saw you hiding back there.
Well, I figure, maybe I'll get mistaken for a firefighter and
It's-
get some hugs and,
It's the head that
So-
gets recognition. It shines.
So when wastewater treatment plant 1 was constructed, what was the average life expectancy of this treatment plant?
Counselor Smith, treatment plants usually are the infrastructure. I mean, this is a round figure. It depends on many factors, but quite often the planning is used for like 20 years. If you're going to plan for something to be 20 years, and then you can do some sort of a major overhaul, not have to necessarily build a new plant, but you need to have some sort of major overhaul or investment, and then you can get some more years out of it. It much depends on technology types and a lot of things. That's a rule of thumb you can look at.
So 20 years, is it okay for me to assume then we've done an overhaul on wastewater treatment plant 1?
No, we haven't.
No.
No.
So we have a plant that's 45 years old. Okay, well over
It's
twice.
had some minor work done, but not any kind of major rebuild or refurbishment.
Okay. There was also something brought to my attention with regards to how long we've gone in the past, and largely, I would have to say it's as a politician, it's hard to make the unpopular decisions. One unpopular decision would be to keep your water costs level without ever raising them. What's the longest, if you know, amount of time we've gone in the past without even raising our water rates? I believe Peter Wells could probably answer
Counselor
that.
Smith, I'm not sure. I know there were a couple of years, at least 3 or 4, that we didn't raise rates. Prior to that, and prior to me coming to the city, I'm not really sure.
Okay. So we're dealing with a plant that's surpassed its expectancy by well over 25 years. I'm to understand that we've gone as long as 5 years without raising water rates at a certain point in the recent past, which I think both contribute to the cost that I'm sure Councilor Wilkins and Councilor Scott keep wanting to press home for those of us who are slow and not picking up on their issues, that this is going to be a costly fix. But I'll go back to, again, the fact that we had an entire shift of police officers driving around in this city trying to respond to calls not too long ago because we're being frugal with our money. Now, that's responsible. Yes, it is. But to a point, it can be a detriment to our city. That was one case in point. And I'll also go back to the fact that that city manager at the time had to publicly come out and apologize for the city not being prepared to take care of the citizens. I don't want to see that happen again. I'll go back to, again, the metropolitan area that Councilor Clayton loves us to ignore so often, Albuquerque. I remember the current mayor, when he ran for office, he was very proud of having a balanced budget. You don't see him talking about that much anymore. He neglected a police department along with the council, along with the city and the governing bodies of the past, as well as the chiefs of police, who would have you believe that 1,000 officers are enough to deal with what we live in today, the second most dangerous city in the state, or the second most dangerous state in the union, I would want to say. He's now going to spend an estimated upwards to $6 million a year trying to fix that. And I don't think he's going to come out and brag about how much money he's saved, because he's going to end up costing a great deal more, because as well as himself and those that profess to be the leaders of that city in the past trying to save a dime or two have a pretty big debacle on their hands. And I don't want to see that with reference to how we address our water issues either. We also have a saying in the military, 2 is 1, 1 is none. I I think you can figure out what that means. If you have one radio, you don't have a radio, because Murphy's Law is going to ensure that that radio breaks. If you have one boat, you don't have a boat, because Murphy's Law is going to ensure that that boat goes flat or sinks. If you have one gun, you don't have a gun. I don't think it's responsible to assume that just because this is going to hurt so bad, that we avoid the pain. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Counselor Wilkins.
I'd like to just address some of the comments. Made it sound like, I'm scared to spend money or I'm scared to make a hard decision. Trust me, I've been criticized on a lot of my decisions and things I voted for that people wanted me to vote something different. I was the one that pushed this water rate increase in the beginning, and I thought it was needed, and I found that it's more than what we needed, and I've tried to stop it and cut it back on it, and I haven't been successful on that, but I'll keep fighting that fight till I'm out of office. We're paying cash for things that we thought we were going to borrow some of them. But again, I think that should go back to the citizens. So I'm not scared to vote for something that we need. And when I ask staff, tell me why this wouldn't work, bypassing it, and just taking it straight to 2, well, that wasn't the plan. That's the answer I got. Well, I'm sorry. You know how many times we've changed the plan on what we're financing, what we're building, what we're not building. If you take a look at our study that this rate base, the rate was on, we're supposed to be building a warehouse and office and everything down at waste treatment too. We're not building it now. So there's several things. Stuff change all the time. And I was here when the city manager had to apologize because he didn't have enough snow plows to take care of that big storm. But when he apologized, he explained it too. It made sense to me. Do we buy 10 snow plows for one big snowstorm every 15 years? No, it doesn't make sense. Do we deal with it for a day or two and save millions of dollars every year? Yes, that makes sense. So it makes sense sometimes. I've brought more police officers on since I've been on, brought more firefighters on, even when it wasn't done, it wasn't popular in the beginning, and I voted for it. So I'm not scared to make the hard decisions, and trust me, when you got NAIOP and all the politics going behind this, not the cost benefit and the common sense, but the politics behind this, pushing it forward and saying, hey, this is the new high-tech plant that we need. It's funny, Aztec, New Mexico just built one, half the cost, and it's not the membrane. So they're still building the other kind. And when we only need 1B, which is the rating of the reuse for irrigation, we don't need to spend $25 million. And, I'm sorry, I come up with different numbers than the finance director myself. You put in $28.5 million or even $25 million at 4.1 over 25 years, everybody can go online to do a mortgage calculator. And I come up with a lot bigger number. And ironically, the last refinance was $27 million, and it's $40 million when everything's added up, and it's only over 17 years. So I hope we're right and we get a better rate, and somehow it's changed, it's different. Might be because we're paying more in the beginning, in the first 7 years. I hope it is. But I'm not willing to spend $38 million when we don't need it. That's the issue. We don't need it yet. And trust me, I'm going to get criticized, and I hate to say it, if people don't get active and stay involved, it'll probably go back through in April when I'm out of office and they got other people to vote along because of the political pressure. Thank you.
Anything further?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Counselor Clayton.
gee, I get a second shot, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you largely. Let's just kick a few things around here. I have a question, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure who I should address it to. Dan? You may not know the answer. I may have to address it to the city manager. With the advent of this $25 million bond put into play, will that cause the taxes to go up for the citizens and their water bills?
Mayor,
Currently?
Councilor, you mean the water rates?
Water rates?
Yeah, the rates are technically not taxes, but Mayor, Councilor, no, the rates are already in place to pay for the financing of this project.
Thank
So no,
you,
we will not raise the
sir.
rates.
That's what I wanted to hear publicly, because so many people are saying, oh, the taxes are going to, or the water rates are going to go up, the water rates are going to go up, and we talk about future projects. This project stands alone. Forget about what future projects are going to be. They'll fund themselves as we come to those projects. This project stands alone, and he's absolutely correct. There will not be an increase in the water rate because this bond is put forth. That's my first question, or first statement. I think it's rather ludicrous to compare a snowstorm, which happens once in a blue moon, to a water waste treatment plant that runs 24/7, 365 days a year. It doesn't make any sense. I think that's about it, Mr. Mayor. I'll just pass for the moment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Counselor Scott, I heard you? Yeah, fine. Yeah, sorry. You guys both kind of chimed at the same time there, so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to thank everybody who came here tonight. And I'd like to invite you at any time to contact me on this issue or any other important issue that comes before the city of Rio Rancho. I was surprised tonight that the chamber came and spoke on this. I knew NAIOP was. I would have liked to have been invited to their discussions. I might have learned something. I might have been able to discuss all the possibilities in maybe a non-political venue. I would have appreciated that. I hope in the future, on something as big and as important and as expensive as this, I hope to get that invitation. I would welcome that. I keep my city cell phone next to me at my desk all day, and if I'm not on one of my other phones, I answer it. And any constituent that would like to discuss this with me after tonight's vote is welcome to call me tomorrow or any other day. So with that, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Counselor Robinson, anything there? Okay, thank you. All right, the council's all spoken twice on this particular issue. I think if there's not anything else, I'll go ahead and call the vote on it. Mr. Ruger?
Counselor Everett.
Yes.
Counselor Wilkins.
No.
Counselor Scott.
No.
Counselor Smith.
Yes.
Counselor Clayton.
Yes.
Counselor Robinson.
This is going to die, so I'd like staff to reevaluate this one more time, this 10-year-old plan, and make sure it's the right option for the city. So no.
Mayor Hall.
Yes.
The ordinance passes, but not with a sufficient number of votes to become effective.